He never forgave her, not for a single day. Imagine stepping onto a movie set in 1981, the air thick with summer heat and unspoken tension. Two of the most intense actors alive are about to share the screen for the first and last time. One believes acting is about ruthless control. The other believes it's about bleeding in front of strangers. They were never going to get along. What happened between them was so raw, so bitter, that people on set still lower their voices when they talk about it 40 years later. But before we get to the explosion, you need to understand the man behind the storm. He grew up under endless Texas sky, in a little town most people have never heard of. His father wrestled oil rigs for a living. His mother wore 3 hats at once: cop, teacher, beauty shop owner, just to keep the lights on. Life was hard work before breakfast and quiet pride after sundown. That land, that silence, that stubborn refusal to explain yourself, it sank deep into his bones. Harvard came as a shock. A football scholarship dragged him east, where he roomed with a future vice president and studied dead poets while blocking linebackers twice his size. He graduated with honors, then turned his back on everything safe, and moved to New York with nothing but a duffel bag and a hunger to act. Broadway gave him his first taste. Small movie parts followed. He never begged for attention. He just showed up, did the work, and dared the world to look away. By the early 80s, the world was starting to notice. He could play tender husbands and cold-blooded killers with the same unblinking stare. Then came the role that changed everything, a relentless marshal hunting a desperate man, and suddenly the whole planet knew his name. Oscars, blockbusters, modern westerns he directed himself. He built a legend out of gravel and silence. He married 3 times. The first wife came from old Hollywood royalty and understood words the way he did. They burned bright and burned out fast. The second gave him 2 children and 15 grounded years on a Texas ranch, the happiest stretch of his life, until the spotlight grew too loud and the planes flew too often. The third, a quiet photographer he met on location, finally gave him the peace he'd been chasing since childhood. They still live far from cameras. On land you can ride across for hours without seeing another soul. If this story is already pulling at something inside you, do me a favor. Share it with someone who needs to hear that even legends carry scars. It only takes a second, and it means everything. Now back to 1981. The movie was called Something Forgettable, a dusty Southern love story about 2 broken people trying to outrun their mistakes. On paper, perfect. In reality, a nightmare. She had just won her first Oscar. She walked onto set glowing with confidence, ready to dig deep, cry real tears, do whatever it took to make the audience feel. He walked on ready to speak as little as possible, hit every mark exactly, and go home. Their styles didn't clash. They detonated. She wanted to talk about feelings, run lines 100 different ways, stay in character between takes. He wanted quiet, precision, no hand-holding. To him, her endless questions felt like weakness. To her, his icy distance felt like contempt. Crew members remember the day everything boiled over. She asked for one more take, something small, a different shading of pain. He froze, stared at her like she'd insulted his mother, then walked off set without a word, not yelling, not slamming doors, just gone. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. One supporting actor later said, "You could feel the temperature drop 20 degrees when she tried to give him a note. He never raised his voice. He didn't have to. His eyes did the shouting." The director, someone who adored her from a previous film, tried to play peacemaker and only made it worse. Every time the camera rolled, the resentment was right there, crackling between them. Their characters were supposed to fall in love. Instead, the audience felt the truth. These two people could barely stand to breathe the same air. When the movie wrapped, he refused joint interviews. At the premiere, they stood on opposite sides of the red carpet like rival armies. Years later, if her name came up, he'd call her the actress. Nothing more. She, always the professional, would smile tightly and say some actors mistake coldness for strength. The finished film wasn't great. Critics called the romance unconvincing. But watch it today, and you'll feel something electric, because every shared glance is laced with real poison. Their hatred gave the story a bruised, ugly honesty no amount of rehearsal could have faked. They never worked together again. They never spoke again. Two extraordinary talents, trapped for one summer in a pressure cooker of pride and principle. In the end, the only thing they proved was how lonely the top can be when you refuse to bend, even an inch, for another human being. He went on to become an American icon. She became a beloved national treasure. And somewhere out on that Texas ranch, under the same wide sky that raised him, the memory still sits like a stone he never quite managed to throw away. Some fires never really go out. They just burn quieter with time. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that even the strongest people can carry private wars that never make the headlines, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories. Hollywood wishes stayed buried, and share it with someone who understands that real life is messier than any script. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one.